In the last video, I talked about symmetry under time translation, and today we'll talk about symmetry under space translation. Okay, imagine if you have a system which is, imagine a system that is isolated from everything else. Let's say there are several particles in that system which are interacting with each other, and that system is not influenced by anything else. Then if you take that system as a whole and displace it to some another location, okay, everything that is happening within the system will remain unaffected. Okay, so you will not be able to say whether the system was here or here when you did the experiment. Okay, so that's the symmetry which we are talking about. And what I'll do is I'll start by a simple example to appreciate what we're trying to say. And the simple example is that of two particles which are interacting with each other. Okay, and I imagine that both the particles are only in, let's say, can live only in the x-axis, only along the x-axis. Okay, so the system lives only in one dimension. One-dimensional space. That's what I mean. So let's have a look at this one. Okay. So that's your, let's say, x-axis, some origin O, and your okay, somehow it feels nicer if you have color. Let's see. You have a particle here, okay, and another particle here. Let's say the coordinates are x1 and x2, and their masses are m1 and m2. Okay. So how many degrees of freedom does this system have? What do you think? Meanwhile, I'll make this black in color. Okay. So this system clearly has 2 degrees of freedom. Two particles each allowed to move only along the x-axis. Okay. So there are 2 degrees of freedom. Okay, that's good. Let's write down the kinetic energy and the potential energy to construct the Lagrangian. Okay, so your T is half m1 x1 dot square plus half m2 x2 dot square. Okay, and I choose a special kind of a potential for this problem. I say that the potential is of the following form. Let's see what it is. So half k x2 minus x1 minus a square. Okay, so what I'm imagining is that these two particles are, let's say, connected by a spring of constant k. Okay, and the how do you say it, the unstretched length of the spring is a. Okay, so the spring length is a, there is no force on either of the particles. The moment you stretch or compress, meaning x2 minus x1 becomes different from a, then there is a force, and that's the spring constant. Now this may look like a simple example with two masses and a spring, but you'll see later, or maybe you already know, that this is a very good approximation for real systems. So you'll encounter many systems in which their constituents will, to first degree of approximation, interact in such a manner. Okay, if you do not know this already, we'll have later occasions to talk about this, but nevertheless we anyhow we are going to choose such a potential for our system. Let me write down here. Okay, let me just write down whatever I have said here. So we are imagining as if the two masses are connected by a spring of constant k. I hope that's clear from here. Okay, that's x2 minus x1 is the separation between these two, right? These two masses. And if you subtract a from it, let me write down what a is first, then a is the unstretched length of the spring. Spring. Okay. So if x2 minus x1 is different from a, it means that either it is compressed or stretched. So there is a force. Okay. Now, okay. You see, there are no constraints on this system. So the Cartesian coordinates are good. You can use them as your coordinates for writing down Euler-Lagrange equations. So there is no problem with that. But I will use a different set of coordinates other than the Cartesian to demonstrate the power of using some good coordinates. Okay, that's what I want to do. So I will choose, instead of the Cartesian coordinates, which as I said are perfectly good because of them being independent of each other, let me choose the following. Let me choose the following to be the generalized. Choose the generalized coordinates to be following. So one coordinate I call it small q, which will be x2 minus x1, and another coordinate I call capital Q, which I will call m2x2 plus m1 x1. I choose them because I can do so. Let's say if you don't want to choose it, you want to choose the generalized coordinates to be x2 minus x1 and another one to be x2 plus x1, you can do so. Okay, there's no problem with that. But I want to show why this choice is really a fantastic choice, and you'll see soon why. Let me see. Okay, maybe I should go to the next page. So take those coordinates and invert them now. Okay. So you determine x1 and x2 in terms of small q and capital Q. That's what you have to do. And you should do the following exercise and check that indeed you get this result. So you get x1 is capital Q minus m2 small q over m1 plus m2, and your x2 turns out to be q plus capital Q plus small m1, capital Q plus m1 small q over m1 plus m2. Okay, so that should be easy. Let's check whether this is correct. So you should do this. It's minor trivial algebra, nevertheless do it. Let's check whether this is fine. Okay, always do a check after you have done some algebra, and let's see what that is. Let's check whether x2 minus x1 comes out to be q. Okay, that's what should happen. So I calculate x2 minus x1. So both have m1 plus m2 in the denominator. M1 plus m2, and let's see what's in the numerator. X2 is this, q plus m1 q, m1 small q minus x1, so minus capital Q plus m2 small q. This capital Q cancels, and you have m1 plus m2 you can take out, and q will be the factor, and which you see is q. And that's what we started with. So let's go back here. Okay, so indeed what I have given as result is correct. Now our goal is to find first the kinetic term, potential term, in terms of the generalized coordinates. Okay, so that's what we'll do. So you take T, finding the Lagrangian. in oops, something I've done. How come? Let's see. Should be able to get rid of it. It's not bothering us anyway, so yeah, I can cancel here. Okay, so what? Yeah. Okay, there is some Lagrangian in finding the Lagrangian L. Oops. Okay, so something is wrong. Okay, I think I know. Let's go to toolbar and yeah, now it's fine. So L, Q, Q, possibility. Let's see whether there is a T here. And of course, I should have written down Q dot, capital Q dot, and then T. That's what we are doing right now. I can remove this toolbar. Okay, good. Okay, so let's find out T now. So your T is, as before, half m1 x1 dot square plus half m2 x2 dot square, and let's substitute our x1 and x2 from here. Okay, so do you get half m1, okay, x1 dot square? This will involve m1 plus m2 square in the denominator, so let me write that down. m1 plus m2 whole square. Okay, and then your x1 dot square will have this piece. It will have q dot square plus m2 square q dot square minus 2 m2 q dot, capital Q dot. Okay, so here you see that you have off diagonal terms also. See, this one is q dot q dot, so it's a diagonal term. Q dot, small q dot, that's a diagonal term. But small q dot with the capital Q dot, that's an off diagonal term. Let's write down the next term, half m2 x2 dot square. So I should look at this one now. Again, you have m1 plus m2 whole thing squared in the denominator, and then you have q dot square, capital Q dot square, plus m1 square small q dot square plus 2 m1 small q dot, capital Q dot. Okay, let's see what we get when we add the two. You see that these cross terms, okay, off diagonal terms. So this will have m1 m2, this will have m2 m1, which is same as before, and then you have small q dot, capital Q dot, which is also here, a factor of 2 and a factor of half, which is also present here, and they are opposite in sign, so these two cancel. Okay, so they go away, and what you're left with is the following. Let me just write it down. What you're left with is this, half 1 over m1 plus m2 capital Q dot square plus half m1 m2 in the numerator and m1 plus m2 in the denominator and small q dot square. That's what you're left with. All the off diagonal pieces are gone. That's good. So let me write down the Lagrangian directly because u is simple. So my Lagrangian is half, I'm writing that down again. Anyway, let me write down. Q dot square plus half m1 m2 over m1 plus m2 q dot square minus u. And what is u? u is half k. It has x2 minus x1, which is q, small q, okay? Q minus a is a constant, remember that, square. So that's what your Lagrangian is. That's what your Lagrangian is. Okay, of course I can redefine my small q and absorb that constant a which is sitting in the last term, but I'm not really bothered with that one, so I'll leave it. Now what's so nice about this Lagrangian, or what's so nice about the choice of coordinates that we have made? Can you spot something? You see, the capital Q does not appear in this Lagrangian, meaning Q, this capital Q, is a cyclic coordinate. Okay, so that's what's so nice about the choice I have made. Q is cyclic. Okay, I hope you appreciate this. You could have there's a phone call, just again. You could have worked with the Cartesian coordinates, which was fine, they were independent, but then neither of them, neither x1 nor x2, is a cyclic coordinate. Okay, you could have worked with the difference of the x1 and x2 and the sum of x1 and x2 as the generalized coordinates, and if you do that exercise, you will find that you don't find any cyclic coordinate there as well. But if you make the choice which I have made now, you'll find that one of the coordinates is going to turn out to be cyclic, which is the case here. Okay. That's good. That's very good. That's what is good about our choice of coordinate. Anyhow, so you already know that if a coordinate is cyclic, then the corresponding generalized momentum is conserved, which means that let me go to the next slide. Which means that the generalized momentum corresponding to Q, okay, is conserved. Okay. Okay, just a second. Please stay back. Okay, it's conserved. That's good. So let's find out what that thing is. Okay, so the generalized momentum PQ is del L over del Q dot. Remember this? And what is del L over del Q dot? Let's see. This is the only place where Q dot appears. There is no other place. And if you differentiate, you'll get Q dot over M1 plus M2, right? So you get this is equal to Q dot over M1 plus M2, which is same as, what is Q dot? Let me write down 1 plus M1 over M2. And what's Q dot? Q dot is d over dt of Q. And what is Q? Q2 is M2 x1, M2 x2 plus M1 x1. That's good. Which is d over dt of M2 x2 plus M1 x1 over M1 plus M2. Right? Does this appear familiar? Okay. This R, or the quantity in the round brackets, is the location of your center of mass. Okay, the center of mass of your system is located at this place. So all you are getting is that the velocity with which the center of mass is going to move is a constant. Okay, that's what it says, which is true, right? And just a second, let me see what else I wanted to say. Okay. So you see, you have got this result because of the symmetry that was present in the system. That if you take the entire system and move rigidly to some other place, the Lagrangian would not change. I hope you can see that thing here. The first place when we wrote down the Lagrangian here. See, the U cares not about x2 and x1 individually. It doesn't care where exactly x2 is, where exactly the second particle is or first particle is. All it cares is the difference between those locations. Okay, and here anyway these are velocities, so it doesn't care about what the locations are. And that is why you are getting this conservation law, that the center of mass is moving with the constant speed, which is also equivalent to saying that your total momentum of your system is conserved. So if you look at this numerator, the numerator is just m2 v2, which is the momentum of particle number 2, m1 v1, which is the momentum of particle number 1, and that's the total momentum of your system, which is conserved because the total time derivative of this is 0. Okay, and this conservation law you have got because of the symmetry which we have in the system. Okay, that's one. But also we have realized that a good choice of generalized coordinates will make this thing apparent. Okay, and you will be able to identify, or you will be able to make some of the coordinates cyclic depending on what the situation is. Okay, let me say a little bit more about the coordinates q and capital Q. Okay, imagine that you take your system which has these two particles, okay, and this guy is here, that guy is here, which means the small q and capital Q have some values. Now let's say I do something to the system, I push this here and pull that one there, so you have new x1 and x2 values, which means you have new q and new small q and capital Q values. Okay, that's what will happen if you change the coordinates. Now because small q and capital Q are independent, I can choose not to change the small q and change the capital Q. Okay, so that's the kind of transformation that I want to look at. So let's look at a transformation where your q remains unchanged, the small q unchanged, and only capital Q changes. Okay, and I can do so because small q and capital Q are independent. If they were not, then I could not have done this. Okay, so let's see. What I'm saying is I do some I move the two particles at different locations such that the change in q, small q, is 0, which means x2 minus x1 does not change, which means delta x2 minus delta x1 is 0, or delta x2 is same as delta x1. Okay, and your capital Q has changed. Now what does it mean that small delta x2 is same as small delta x1? Meaning the change in the location of particle number 1 equals in the magnitude and direction both to the change in the location of particle number 2, which means that I have taken the entire system and moved both the particles by equal amounts in the same direction, either this way or that way. Okay, so as if I have taken the entire system and rigidly moved it from here to another location. That's what it means. And you see, when I do so, okay, when I do so, it does not matter what what capital Q is. If I have chosen to keep small q to be 0, then no matter what I do to capital Q, my Lagrangian does not change because that does not appear in the Lagrangian. Okay, and you should check that capital Q just determines the, and anyway we have seen it, it just determines the location of the center mass right? It was m2x2 plus m1x1. I mean, all that is missing is the denominator with total mass, which you can multiply. Okay, so that is one thing which I wanted to say. Now, if you have an isolated system, okay, and with lots of particles in them, and you have a symmetry in the system, which means that you can take the entire system here or this way or that way, okay, things should not change. Then you should be able to choose your generalized coordinates in such a manner that you will get 3 cyclic coordinates, okay, and each will correspond to a translation of the center of mass, either in the x direction or y direction or the z direction. Okay, that's good. That's so we have talked already about the conservation of energy that arises from time translation symmetry. Then we have talked about conservation of momentum, the total momentum of the entire system, through this example, which arises because of space symmetry. And you can imagine that if we take a system which is again isolated from everything else, and I rotate it about some axis, okay, then nothing should change. The system should not know that whether it is oriented like this or that, and we should have a corresponding conservation law arising from such a symmetry, and there should be a corresponding generalized coordinate which should be cyclic. Okay, so that we will take up in next video. And yeah, that's all what I have to say in this one. See you then.